Hey, this is Brian with King Grizzly. Today we're going to continue going through the Elementor Pro widgets. We're up to the fourth one, which is forms. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that right onto the page. And we'll give this thing a little more space. Okay, so there's a form in sort of its default state. I'm going to click on it. I love the forms widget in Elementor for simple forms, especially because they're such a hassle to do normally. And this makes it reasonably straightforward. First thing I might do, just to help my eye here, is limit the width of the content a bit. I'm just going to set it to 650 pixels wide or something. Okay, so we've got a form. If I click on it, let's go through some of the basic setup here. One, we can give it a name. So let's just pretend it's a contact form. And then we can add our fields, right? So by default, it's got name, email, a message. If we click on them, we've got some options, right? So what type of form is this? You can see some of the options here. Text, email, text area, a URL. There's different things people can put in. Even select boxes. You can even have hidden fields, reCAPTCHAs, honeypots. It's fairly sophisticated. You can set an ID on it. You can even pull in dynamic information. You can do a lot. One cool thing here I like is you can set a column width. So if for some reason I wanted to do it, 50%, a time I might do that. Let's say this was like first name, right? So first name. I can even put in a placeholder, your first name or whatever. And then I might set that to 50%, and then I can duplicate that. And let's make a last name, right? Last name. So if you wanted to separate those out, I don't think anyone would necessarily want to type your last name, but just showing how you can do these placeholders. And there we go, 250% wide fields. And these can be set per device size. So if I'm on mobile, maybe I want to change them each to 100% width because it might get kind of crowded. So then we have an email field here. We have the ability to have the message field, which is like a longer form thing. And we can add more, right? So let's just say I needed, I don't know, some sort of a select. Like we need to give some options here, right? I don't know. It's like, what size shirt do you wear? Shirt size. Because whenever you contact my company, I send you a free shirt, apparently. I can make this required if I want or not. So let's just say small, medium, large, extra large, and then there's like extra, extra large. Okay, so do we want to support multiple selection on that? I'm going to say no, because I only give away one free shirt per contact form. So now we've got this kind of cool drop down, and if I decide that that's not obvious enough, I could type these all the way out, right? So on and so forth. So we now have a nifty little drop down. We can set the input size. So if your theme takes advantage of this, oh, this is actually on the input. Sorry, I was thinking that was the button. Here's the submit button. So the submit button does the same sort of thing, medium, large, extra large. There's a really cool add-on called Style Kits, I believe, by a group called Analog WP. I can't remember. I'll put it in the description, but basically they have some really neat options for styling your extra small, medium, large presets for different things so that they're global. I know that's an aside, but it's something that comes up. Okay, so anyway, here's the form. We'll get into actions after submit here, but first let's look at styling. So we can set up a gap for our columns, right? We can space out our rows. We can space the labels off of the input boxes a little bit. We can set our text color, our typography. Say I want to change the typeface for some reason. You can choose that here. You can set the sizes. Maybe I want to make it all uppercase. So normal Elementor stuff. If it were me, whoops, I might even space the letters out a little bit. Get stylish. So yeah, we can style the fields, same sort of thing. I don't know why we do this, but if we wanted to make our text green, we could. don't want to do that. You could actually set a background color, which could be kind of cool. Could maybe even get rid of our borders if we wanted. So, fully customizable style-wise with the button, same sort of thing. Straightforward sort of Elementor editing. I can set a hover background color. Really slick. Okay, and then we can even style the messages that pop. So like if there was an error or a success, we could, so success for me, green seems like a pretty good option. We can style those. If we go back over to content, what do we want to happen? Like when somebody submits this thing, right? So Elementor has some really cool options for that. Default would be to send an email, but we can also do things like redirect. There's integrations into things like Mailchimp. So if I want to add Mailchimp, let's just say Mailchimp, it adds a tab here for me, and then I get a drop down. I need to go get an API key from Mailchimp, but then once I do that, we can hook it up to our audience, our forms or lists, and so this will actually feed Mailchimp. For this one, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to send an email, and you can have more than one action that happens, right? So we could send an email and redirect to like a success page or something. But we also have, so if we want to redirect, you'll see it pops up a new tab here, and then we can control like, well, where do you want to redirect to? And that can even be dynamic. For now, let's just set up the email. So, where do you want it to go? So I'm having it go to King Grizzly. You could have it go wherever, and then you can preload the subject. And then by default, it's got these sort of like short codes. All the fields are going to come in here. But if you wanted to customize the message, so because this is the email that's going to come through, right? So if I leave all fields, it's just going to sort of send me an email with all the fields. But if I wanted to, as you can see here, it says to customize the sent fields, copy the shortcode that appears inside each field and paste it above. So what I could do is go to my form fields, click on first name, and then I think it's under advanced. Yep, here's the shortcode. So I could copy that. So then I could go back to the email that's going to spit out, maybe get rid of this, and I could format this a little bit. First name, last name. I could basically adjust this email as as needed. I think I was probably okay with all fields here, but you can experiment with looking at the how the email's formatted when it comes in. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think this might support some simple HTML markup. So then you can control the from email, who it's coming from, the reply to. I often will set that as the email field, right? So like if a customer fills this out, the reply to by default, if I change this to email field, will then be to that customer, not me like responding to myself, to the sending email. You can carbon copy. You can also have some metadata printed on there, or if you don't want it, just turn them, X them all out. So just let you know things like when did this come in, or what page URL. This could be useful for conversion metrics. And you can control if it's a plain text or an HTML email. So one thing to know about this is if you're using WordPress, by default, the forms are going to try to send using your server's like sort of PHP mailer function, which is kind of notorious for being exploited by spammers. And so oftentimes emails sent that way will end up in a spam box, or they won't even make it. So it's highly recommended to grab a plugin, an SMTP plugin. I'll put a link to a good one, where essentially what you do is you authenticate through an email at the same domain. So like for us, we would actually want to set up a plugin to actually log in or authenticate to this email that's at the same domain as our website. Much less likely to get flagged as spam. So yeah, I'll put that in the description. There's one that we use. I think it's called something like WP SMTP. It works quite well, and they have good documentation on how to hook up things like Gmail, or just get your SMTP credentials for whatever email provider you have. That's about it. You can give your form an ID if you need to. You can even set custom messages. So like if I want to change the success message or an error message, I could put something more specific to the use case. But that's a pretty good overview of forms. You can get much fancier. Like I have a client where they use the Elementor API to really customize how the forms work with their sort of CRM system. So you can get sophisticated, but for most sites, or at least smaller businesses and things, just sort of a basic form like this, it does well. And then what's cool is you can take advantage of like the Elementor pop-ups feature, where maybe someone clicks a link and it triggers a little slide in with like the form built into it. You can get pretty fancy, or you can save a form as a template or a widget so it's centralized. So you maybe have a form on 30 pages on your site, but it's actually the same form. So you basically just edit one form, updates across the site, and since you can stamp that or print that sort of like after, where was it at, the metadata. Now I'm gonna not find it because I'm talking. Yeah, this metadata. If we include the page URL, then you'll at least know what page that form was filled out on. So yeah, hopefully that's a good intro to forms. Please consider subscribing. We're going to keep making more of these videos and go through all the widgets. And yeah, any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.